Assalamu alaikum, Huzur.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah.
Could you please tell us some few words about your trip in Belgium?
About your trip to Belgium. Say something.
It's an amazing coincidence because last night, I was thinking of nobody having asked me about my trip to Belgium. It was just ignored by the French class. While it should have been the French class which should have taken note of this, because the Belgium is mostly a French-speaking country, right? There is not much to say about it except the routine, that I was kept extremely busy by the Jamaat in Belgium. It is mainly because our new style of holding meetings which did not exist previously. Previously they used to combine so many different ethnic groups, speaker of different languages, different educations and thoughts, etc., that it was impossible to handle all the questions in a manner as to satisfy all of the present. There were many questions in which they were just not interested, most of them, because they belong to a different way of school of thinking. There were Christians, there were Jews, there were Hindus, there were atheists, and there were so many other groups which sat together in the same majlis. Now how could I answer, first of all, how could the questions be collected in which they will all be interested? And the collection of questions was not organized by us in the manner as to suggest to everybody what question he should ask. They flowed automatically into the forum, and I had to answer every question. So I advised the Belgium Jamaat to have distinctly separate groups. As far as the language goes, language-wise, but also as far as possible, similar people of similar thinking should be gathered. And that can be done if the Jamaat is active in Tabligh. There, the Jamaat would know their thoughts and views, and from their large contact, they could skim a few to be present in that majlis. Not a few, but many in fact. So that will make a coherent team of people who will be interested in similar questions. All these instructions were issued to the Jamaat before. They almost carried the instructions to the letter, but unfortunately there were some there who wanted to show that they have been preaching to so many people, while it was just a show. Because the questions they asked me told me that they had never been approached before properly. So they somehow were collected. Maybe they were told, many among them were told, that we have a dinner hosted in your honor and in the honor of the Caliph who is visiting here. So just out of respect for a visitor whom the people there respect, they might have gathered. And while they were gathered, they should have been told, why not ask questions? So they were totally unprepared. And the questions asked were so meaningless. Anyone who had any real contact with an Ahmadi preacher, an Ahmadi person, a caller Da'i Allah, he could not have asked those elementary and unrelated questions. So this was the bitter experience about Belgium. But after that, I told them not to go by such amassed body of people, just for the purpose of showing me that they have been active. If they're not active, I don't mind, but I mind falsehood. They should have been true. So with that result, the meetings that followed were numerous, but they were well screened. The result was that, as you can see from the videos, the questions are much more coherent and related to the subject, and people, although they ask some very apparently hostile questions, but it appears that they mean business sincerely, with the result that all through that procedure you can see a gradual change in their attitude and softening of their features, and instead of that hostile, independent attitude, they begin to bow to the Ahmediyya philosophy, and they apparently seem coming closer and closer. Not that close as to accept Ahmediyya, but close enough to admit that after hearing the answers, they have no argument left with them. Yet, they said, they were dazed by this change. So they said, we are not yet ready to accept Ahmediyya. All we can say is that we are left totally disarmed. That was a good achievement, and that shows that the collection of people in this session was genuine and meaningful. So they parted convinced, but not convinced enough to become Ahmadis. I think that was because of the shock they received. In just one sitting, conversions could not be made. So I sent them a message that whatever journey is left for them to cover, it can only take place with the help of Allah, not otherwise. So if they have no answer to the queries which I raised, and if all their previous arguments have been demolished, then whatever they are left with is to pray to Allah and to seek His help, to make you understand Ahmadiyyat well enough to accept it willy-nilly. You're left with no choice but to accept it. So this message was delivered to the gentleman and his wife, who were both there, and who appeared to agree, both of them, appeared to agree with all the answers. So this is just an example. But all this happened during 16 hours of such discussions perhaps. So I cannot reproduce all that passed within a short period of a few minutes. But I have given you a taste of what was happening. Apart from that, I was given the opportunity to meet many Ahmadis who had come from different places. Some directly from Pakistan, some via Germany, some via Holland, some via France. So they had taken some via Switzerland. They had taken different routes, but they had taken different routes as well as they had brought different problems with them. The European law does not permit any immigrant to land in one country and seek asylum in another. they are most often returned to the point of their touching down. So the problem which I felt was that among them there could be a large number who would be telling lies for the sake of seeking asylum in Belgium. So during my last speech and also during my meetings, I told them that if I don't want to expose each of you by questioning who did this and who did that. It will be rather unkind of me. But I told them that if they seek refuge in Holland, in Belgium, on the strength of what lies they concocted, then this refuge seeking has no merit in the eyes of Allah. So do not want to befool me by saying we did this and we did that, because Allah knows. And if this refuge is disliked by Allah, disapproved by Allah, then it is far better for you to go back to your country and at least risk the alternative of being expelled from this country. I have the impression that most of the boys accepted this, and some of them even told me that whatever happens to us and our family who have been living in Germany sometimes, in this case for 9 years, and yet despite the fact that all the children were brought up in German schools, speaking German language, acquiring to a large degree German culture, etc., one judge who is notorious for being very strict in granting asylum to Ahmadis, almost in every case it was the same judge who was responsible for these cruel treatments. So this person also mentioned that it was the same judge who did it despite 9 years of being in Germany. But after hearing me, he told me that despite the risk that we will all be turned out and sent back to Pakistan, where it will be very difficult for us to adjust, we will do that, because there is no other way out after listening to your advice that we must remain conscious that Allah is watching us. So alhamdulillah, it was rather sad for me to see their faces because they're all very extremely discouraged and scary of what was to happen, what will be happen. So it was sad, but it was a must. I had to discharge my responsibility towards truth. So in the final address, I took up this subject mainly and reassured them that they should not be afraid of anything if they rely on Allah and take any decision with the awareness that Allah would like it. Then they should not be afraid. He will take care of them as much in Belgium as elsewhere. I said, this is my past experience. It's impossible for God to abandon such people. So I'm so glad to notice that all the sad faces were brightened. Those who were crying before, they started laughing. And they were so satisfied in my address and the way I put it, that our last parting of the ways, our last parting, my taking leave of them, was in a completely different, joyous mood. So this is in short what happened in Belgium. There are many other things which I cannot condense in this short time, but thank you for asking this. The French translation was made by a missionary who had worked in Ivory Coast for a long time. and whose French was quite satisfactory, I think, the way he answered and the way people nodded. So it was an excellent French in which we answered these questions, but again, they were Flemish people. So this we could not avoid. So whatever was said in French from the stage was translated into Flemish by an Ahmadi Azhar from Holland, who has an excellent command over Flemish language. And in one session at least, Hamid from Holland, he took over to translate into Flemish. And his language is beautiful. His English is very sound. So when he took the charge from others, I was very happy and satisfied that whatever he said was exactly what I wanted him to say. Right? How many minutes?
The remaining for the rest of the hour, I think.
Okay, so shall I take leave of you to attend to other business in the meantime? Huh?
Yes, you may.
And you will manage
I'll try to fill
the last 12 minutes to be filled with the translation. Huh?
Inshallah.
Okay. Like Hamid, you can also write down all these things so quickly that I forget that I have to stop somewhere in between. Sorry, pause. But the wonderful translators which Hamid has provided us now, the English one. Assalamu alaikum. Did you see my